Welcome back to the Glass Table. It has been an honor to have leaders share with us each week how they are leading in their industry, impacting communities with a level of vulnerability and transparency. This week we have Shawn Douglass going to be sharing with us how he's building the Rise Above Youth Summit and how he's impacting youth through foster care. Join us at the table.
I appreciate you coming on. And I know you are a John Maxwell leadership coach. You have a lot of great things going on. You were a youth pastor at one time, and all those type of things, man. So, but you guys, so how has it been? Because you still guys have school age children, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so how has that adjustment been having them in the house the whole time?
It's awful. You want me to be real, right?
Yes, let's just be real and honest. Yes.
So we have in our house right now 5 kids.
Hmm.
We have 2 bio kids and then 3 foster kids at the moment. So we
Wow.
have 8-year-old, 11-year-old, 14-year-old, 16-year-old, and 17-year-old.
Wow. Get those rundowns again.
8, 11, 14, 16, and 17.
Wow.
So, and we have 5 kids in 5 different schools.
Hmm.
So when all of this went down and we kind of had to adjust quickly,
Yeah.
every school, of course, has a different platform and a different expectation. And so it was an interesting couple of days trying to figure out who was doing what, where, when, and how.
And how, yeah. Wow, man. I tell you, man, that is awesome. That well, I'm amazed. I know it's a big adjustment for you. And how's it been for Marie?
She's been a trooper because actually when this all went down, the first weekend, I was busy putting together some content for a youth summit,
Okay.
and I actually spent about 20 hours a day in my office working for 3 days straight, very little sleep, just trying to get things up and running.
Yeah.
And then at the end of that, I got sick and then was
Oh
in
wow.
bed for about 2.5 weeks. And so Marie kind of she's amazing anyhow, but she kind of just made things work
Yeah.
and was the teacher and the parent and the cook and the nurse and everything. And so it's
Yeah.
only been in the last week and a half that I've been feeling a lot better,
Okay.
and we've been working more as a team.
Yeah.
But there for a while, she was almost solo because she's like, "You're sick, stay away from us. Go to your office and close the door."
Yeah. So it was. Do you think it was something to do with the virus, or you just wanted to be extra precautious? Just take
Uh,
those extra precautions.
I really have no idea. I had a lot of the symptoms.
Okay.
Um, it, Whatever it was not fun. It was not enjoyable.
Yeah.
So, um, but it was one of those things you really just need to know your own body, and then you need to be able to take care of yourself, and you need to listen
Right.
to yourself. And so that's what I did. And, I'm good now. I feel 100% now. So,
Okay. Well, that's good. I'm glad you're feeling better, man. And so, I mean, and today, so that's because you guys have foster children, and
mhm.
so not only have you all created this dynamic family within your own unit, you've been providing that same family structure for kids who are in the foster system, and through children's services and various other things. So, talk to me about that. Like, what is it like to one? How did you arrive to that point of wanting to open up your home and providing family to others from the outside, and just saying, hey, what we have here can bless these other kids as a foundation?
Well, it's a story that starts about 18 years ago.
Okay.
um, the funny thing is, and you'll laugh at this, is I never intended to have kids.
Mm,
When Marie and I got married, I told her I didn't want kids, and she was told that she would never be able to get pregnant
Wow.
because of some medical issues. And so we had been married about a little over a year when we found out she was pregnant with
Mhm.
our oldest. And so that came as a surprise. And shortly after we found out that she was pregnant, I had resigned as a my youth pastor's position because we were wanting to move back closer to family. So
Okay.
I resigned, and shortly after that, she lost her job. She was a third grade teacher, and she was in a 4E grant position, and so those funds were eliminated, and so she was losing her job at the end of the year.
Wow.
So we were pregnant and expecting, and both unemployed, which was a very interesting situation. Um, and we had a friend that we worked with in ministry, and he came to us and said, "Hey, there's this girls' ranch, and they're looking for some house parents. They need a couple
Oh
to
yeah.
come in and be house parents." And both of us, it was about an hour north of where we were, and we were living in Florida at the time. We both really had it on our hearts that we wanted to move closer to family because her family's in Michigan, my family's in Pennsylvania. We're like, no, that's not really what we want to do.
Yeah.
Um, and Mike said, well, I really feel like you need to go check it out. And I said, well, that's great, Mike, but we're not interested. Um, and that was, I think, in February of that year. And March comes around and he goes, they're still looking. You really need to go check this out. I said, Mike, what part of we're not interested don't you understand?
Right.
Um, and this went on for several months, all the way to June. And we're still both unemployed and looking for jobs, and our son's due in August. And this position is still open, and Mike is still telling us about every week, you need to go check this out. And
Yeah.
I'm stubborn, and so I'm telling him, no, that's not what we want. And the funny thing is we were in Michigan for a baby shower, and we were heading back to our home in Florida, and we're like, okay, fine. It's a Sunday afternoon.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to be there. We're just going to drive on campus, and then we can say we checked it out, and Mike will leave us the heck alone.
Yeah.
So we drove on to this campus, and instantly it was like the peace of God was just like, this is where you're supposed to be.
Wow.
And we both felt it, and we both looked at each other, and we're like, no, this is crazy.
Mm.
We're 20, in our early 20s. We are almost 7 or 8 months pregnant. There's no way they're going to hire us. We don't have any kids. Why would they hire us to take care of kids? This is dumb. So we went home.
And one of which didn't even want any kids.
Right. And we went home, and Mike connected us with the director. We went up and we interviewed, and we're both like, they're not going to hire us. This is ridiculous. So we interviewed, and of course they offered us the position, and that was kind of the beginning of our journey in taking care of kids and working in foster care.
Wow.
So the funniest thing, this is the funny part of the story that we tell, is that the training that they provided when we got there, Marie's at the time, let's see, Marie's 23, I'm 25 or something like that.
Mhm.
And we show up, they give us this manual, this thick book, and they say, this is our manual. Some of it we use, some of it we don't. Figure out what works for you. Good luck. Like, that was our training.
Oh man.
And so we moved into this beautiful 5,000 square foot, like 7-bedroom house. It was like, the house was like 3 years old. They had built it just for this program. Absolutely gorgeous. And we moved in July 15th, and our son is born August 7th, and by an emergency C-section. And then I think it was August 17th, we got 5 girls in our house. So we went from, basically a newlywed couple, just the two of us, to a family of 8 in a matter of a 2-week time frame.
Wow.
So we call that our baptism by fire.
Yeah. Yeah, really. So here it is. You just had a kid, and now instantaneously your family structure goes from 2 adults to like, 8 kids.
8 kids, and 5 of those kids were troubled girls who their parents were not able to, because they were all, this wasn't working with state or foster kids. This was
Yeah.
a private program where they would help kids and families before it got to the foster care level.
Mm.
So these were 5 girls who all had very challenging relationships with their parents, were very rebellious, very, struggle with lots of mental health issues. And Marie and I, literally, the experience we have is what we grew up with. What do?
Right.
You do what you
Right.
know.
Yeah, you just, yeah.
And it's hilarious and frightening to look back and think of some of the tactics or techniques that we tried to implement, and you go, oh my goodness, that was so dumb.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things I love about this story, and this is just the sovereignty of God, right? Like I'm a firm believer that God prepares you and equips you for where you're going, and then when you get there, that is preparing you and equipping you for where he's going to take you. You know what I mean? And it doesn't matter how long you camp out there, doesn't matter how long it takes. The journey is the journey, or I should say the migration is the migration, whichever way you want to look at it, because, but I think, like, here it is, you were a youth pastor, and I think a lot of times, especially with emerging leaders, um, will oftentimes want to look at the end result versus the process of how to get there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And not even looking at their experience now that is getting them through that process, that the experience they're now getting is part of the process in order to get there, right? So I'm reminded of Moses when here it is, he realizes who he is. He stands up for one of his fellow brothers, right? Kills a person, spends 40 years in the wilderness. And then here it is, he leads the children of Israel out of captivity. And then they're in the wilderness for 40 years, and he's teaching them how to survive. I don't think he would have ever known how to survive that if he would have still been in the palace.
Sure.
And he just wouldn't have never known. And so I look at it like this with your journey here, because here it was, you the youth pastor. Then immediately after that, God puts you guys in crisis mode, right? Like no job, no anything. Now you're trying to figure out, and you're probably introduced to systems that you wasn't introduced to before, prior to all these things. And then here it is, God places you in a house with 8 kids who knows the system, whose life has been in crisis, and there happen to be youth, and God has now taken both of these experiences and now utilize that to help you lead them.
And I think it's funny too, is that we're stubborn. We don't necessarily like change, and we don't like change that doesn't look the way that we think it should look. So we had the hilarious thing, we had the opportunity to make this transition probably in February or March or April, but it took us literally 5 months to get past that stubborn point to even go, okay, I hear what you're saying,
right,
and we'll take the next step.
Yeah.
How many times as leaders do we dig our heels in and go, okay, God, this is what I want, and then when he opens a door or he nudges you in a direction, you go, no, that's not how it's supposed to look.
Right. That's interesting, man, because it's not that we're not praying, right? We're making our requests be known to God. Like, we're praying, especially when we get in tough spots as leaders. But you said something interesting, the stubborn piece of what we think something should look like and feel like and be ideal in our mind. You know what I mean? Like, I heard someone say once that the only change that is acceptable to people is the changes they decide to make.
Right.
You know, and that's so true. Like, you know, if I decided to change something that's simple about my life, then it becomes, hey, it's acceptable to me. You know,
Right.
I wish now everybody else around me needs to adapt to this change. And they're like, what in the world are you talking about? Right. You know, so, but that's powerful when we talk about leadership, because, and I know this is one of your favorite topics, it's one of my favorite topics when we talk about leadership, is that, um, and maybe you can expound on this a little bit. Why is it that leaders have such a hard time? Uh, we're great vision casters, right? We will manage change well when we're given a project. We will do all those things, but when it comes down to our innermost personal thing, it seems like we have the hardest time submitting to what God is trying to get us to.
Well, I think number one, the ego gets in the way. We we like to be right. We like to be in charge. You know, leaders tend to want to take the helm, and so often, you know, it's said that people don't like change, but one of my mentors, Paul Martinelli says it's not that people don't like change. People
Mm-hmm.
don't want to be changed. If you
Mm.
open the door and you lay the vision for them and then you show them the path of how to get there, people are willing to do what it takes to get there. They want to feel like they're in control though. And so many times I think in our lives and in our faith journey, we want to be in control. We have a hard time relinquishing that control. And so God kind of points you in a direction, and that direction doesn't look like what you think it should look like. And so you're like, no, 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 that's not the way I'm going to go. But how many times in our lives have we experienced so much grace,
Yes.
um, in that he held that door open for us for 5 months,
Wow.
like, and that led, like, that door led to a life's work for us. You know,
Yes.
we've been in this for 17 and a half years,
Wow.
but he held that door open for us for 5 months.
Mm. And here it
Like,
is.
the
God,
amount of
God is
grace.
trying to send you the answer to your prayer, but because it doesn't look like what you want it to look like, you
Right.
know, and
Right.
and oftentimes I think we're like that because, you know, when we talk about leadership, sometimes we feel like it has to be our project, you know what I mean, or something that we founded or started. And I was talking to a pastor earlier today, and you know, there's a couple initiatives that's happening, you know, in our city around churches and collaborative impact and all those types of things. And so, but it's funny because it's like it's so hard to get people on board because it's not their idea, or it's not their direction, or it's out of their comfort zone. And so outside of youth pastoring, this is definitely like it, as a youth pastor, you, not to say that you wouldn't carry work home, but you went home,
Hmm.
and those
Yeah.
kids went home. You know what I mean? And now you're like in the house.
Sure. We used to joke with our other youth pastor friends when we made the transition. They're like, "What is it like?" And I'd be like, "Well, you know that one kid that is in your youth group, and he's just difficult, and he heckles you, and he's a troublemaker, and he's always, you know." And the funny thing is, those are the kids I was always drawn to. You know,
Yeah.
those are the kids that I always connected with. And it's because I'm the same way. I'm a
Mhm.
rebel. I'm not the guy that's going to just sit back and listen and
Right.
toe the line. But I get, that kid, that one that gets on your nerves the most, that really drives you crazy. Just think about taking that kid and about five more like him home with you and living with him 24/7. That's what it's like.
Mm. Wow. Taking that kid and yeah, that would be a big transition. That would be a huge thing. but I think you just described every one of my kids. No, but I got some good ones. I'm just glad they're all grown and out of the house now. Like,
Right.
yeah,
Going back to you made a comment about how it's hard to get people on board because everybody wants ownership. And
yeah,
I think this is one of the lessons that I'm learning and that I've learned is that God, I don't think God really calls us to own a vision. I
mm,
think he calls us to be a partner
yeah,
in a vision. And he allows us the liberty to develop that and to see things flourish. And
right,
if you want to see movements and you see movements that grow and and take over, I
mm-hmm,
think it's because the leaders are confident enough that they've allowed the vision to be a partnership.
yeah,
They didn't take ownership, but they invited other people into a partnership
yes,
and help them grow.
mm-hmm,
And as we invite others into a partnership, instead of I have to be in control because I want this is mine. No, it's it doesn't matter who gets the glory. It doesn't matter whose name is up in lights. It
mm-hmm,
doesn't matter who gets recognized for it. What is the mission? What is the vision? And
yeah,
then everybody gets to be a part.
yes,
Everybody gets their moment. And I think when we do that, and when you see leaders that are able to do that, that's when you see exponential growth.
right,
That's when you see things that take off, because then you have people that in partnership all
mm-hmm,
have ownership.
you're right. Yeah, that's very key, man, because um, vision is very much like these this snowball effect, right? Like you start from a large hill and you start with this small piece, this small ball, and you just let it go and roll, and it builds up and builds up, and it just takes on massive things that we never thought it would take on. It just becomes larger than what we can actually think. And I think sometimes when you own a vision, you're controlling the mass of it, right? You're controlling the input of it and all those types of things, versus just saying, okay, God, you really just called me to push this ball down the hill, right?
Mhm.
And it's up to you how the form it takes, the all of those things. I mean, man, you look at the body of Christ, right? Just the the form it has taken on, the all the good of it, the bad of it, the lopsidedness of it, the craters in it, and all those types of things. But man, the church is an unstoppable force. And Jesus just kind of he came and he says, "Greater works than these shall you do," right? And just kicked the ball down the hill and left it with guys that most of us wouldn't even have on our team right now. You know what I mean? Like we would only pick Peter after he's written First and Second Peter, and after he had the great sermon on the day of Pentecost. We would only pick Paul that after he's written, majority of the New Testament and had wonderful, crusades and all those things. But we would have never just looked at those guys and said, okay, yeah, that's the guy I want on my team right now to move this vision forward. And then not only not do I want on my team, but this is the guy I'm just going to say, here is the vision, you do with it, you build on it, right?
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah,
I don't think we would ever trust those guys with that.
yeah.
But God is trusting or is entrusting a lot of imperfect leaders to great things and great visions. And I'm excited to see what's going to come out of the innovation is going to come out of all these things with COVID-19 and the how the church has had to readapt and rethink some things and do things differently and be a ministry that matters, you know what I mean, and all
Mhm.
those type of things versus just a church that exists. And so it's going to be interesting to see. It's going to be
Yeah.
interesting to see.
And I think it's interesting. You made the comment about leadership and then management. I think God is searching for leaders. He's looking for leaders that are willing to bring that team on and give that trust and delegate.
Yeah.
And so many of us want to be managers. We
Yeah.
want to manage the vision,
Right.
because we want control. And
Yeah.
and that's not what leadership is about.
Right.
Leadership is about empowering others and
Mhm.
giving them the tool set and the skill set that they need, to take the vision to the next step.
Yeah. And that's an interesting thing, man, because even out of this, and like at the onstart of this, your kids was coming home, you know, using your coaching platform and your connections, you all developed this virtual youth summit and talking about a vision, you know what I mean? And just hearing you talk about it the other day, uh, this is not just an idea, right? It's not just, the brainchild of Shawn Douglass, but it became a vision that you felt like you got from God, and you really just kind of handed and delegated to 20 plus other people to pull all this together and content together. So talk to us a little bit about the youth summit that you guys have going. Give us the full name of it and all of that.
Sure. Rise Above Youth Summit. When things started to come together with COVID-19 and all of this social distancing and schools shutting down in Ohio, my heart has always been for kids. And so
Mm-hmm.
I know that for a lot of families, a lot of kids, the best part of their day is school. Like, they don't go home to an environment that's supportive. They don't go home
Mm-hmm.
to a safe place. They don't have food security. They don't have these things. And so I just felt in my spirit, we need to put something together that is a resource for educators and youth advocates during this time, that they can offer to kids that are isolated.
Mm-hmm.
And so I put a call out in my network for people that would be willing to contribute. And we ended up with 24 speakers who put together content on friendships, getting along with family. How do I handle grief through this situation? Being positive, working towards goals, mindset, finance, 24 different dynamic speakers who all had a heart for youth and saw the vision.
Mm-hmm.
And so we put this together as a free resource that kids can go on and they can log in. And most of the lessons are 15 to 20 minutes long, and they can pick a topic, they can listen to the lesson, and they can grow themselves. This
Yeah.
doesn't have to be a time where people are stagnant. This is actually a great
Right.
opportunity for people to grow and people to build a vision and figure out who they are and what it is that they want in life.
Yeah.
And excuse me, as the vision came to me and I put it out there, and people would talk to me and say, well, your summit. I'm like, no, you got this all wrong. This isn't mine.
Yeah.
It's ours.
Right.
This has to be bigger than a person. This has to be bigger than one individual. If we're
Mm-hmm.
going to impact, the world, if we're going to change lives, if we're going to challenge kids to be better and to do
Yeah.
better, this can't be one person. So, well, you're saying, no, this isn't mine. This is this is something I gift to the world, that this would grow. And so even today, just before meeting with you for the interview, 12 of us got together on a Zoom call and masterminded, how can we take this to the next level? How can we get
Yeah.
this into more people's hands? And so we've got some cool things we're going to be working on to kind of take this to the next level. And I'm
Right.
really excited just to impact the youth.
Yeah.
They are the
Yeah.
leaders of today. They're not the leaders of tomorrow.
No,
because
today.
in their generation with their friends,
Mm-hmm.
they have the opportunity to lead.
Right.
And will the question is, will we give them the support that they need? Will we empower them with the resources that they need so that they can stand up
Yeah,
and
man.
be positive role models and
Right.
positive leaders during this time?
Yeah. And I think the mindset of leaders of tomorrow causes people to subconsciously put off pouring into them today. You know what I
It
mean?
and not only that, it tells our kids that, oh, well, I don't have to do anything right now.
Right.
Yeah, I'm the leader of tomorrow, so
Yeah.
I can play PlayStation all day today and scroll TikTok
Yeah.
and chat with my buddies and sleep till 3 p.m.
Yeah.
You know, I
Yeah.
don't have to do anything today because
You
I'm the
can't
leader
mess,
of
you
tomorrow.
can't mess with their TikTok, man. That's like, I don't know, the
Hey,
new.
I'm guilty. We were talking about this morning. That's one of the
Yeah.
platforms we want to leverage. And
Yeah.
I'm guilty. I get lost in TikTok, you know, just
Yeah.
scrolling because there's some good stuff there.
Yeah. Yeah. We have one child at home, and she'll be turning 17 in a couple weeks. But she's been recording TikToks, and I mean, some of them are hilarious. You know, there's skits and different things of that nature. But yeah, I mean, sometimes I hear her like in the nighttime, like laughing. I go in there like, what is she? She's on TikTok or something. But but you said something, because I want us to dive into the Rise Up Youth Summit a little bit, and really, talk a little bit more about that, and where you envision that going. Where it is now, where you envision it going. But I want you said something right at the very key at the start uh, of talking about that, which I thought was very key. You said something that most of us, I don't think, really think about. You said for a lot of children, a lot of kids, um, both urban, suburban, by urban context, rural, the best part of their day is school because of the environment they're coming home to,
Mm-hmm.
or the environment they have to walk through in order to get to home. You know what I mean? So talk a little bit about that. Uh, uh, the because I don't think I've ever thought about school being the best part of a kid's day.
Yeah. So how many of our kids go home to an empty house
Mm,
because they're in a single parent home and that parent is working 3 jobs trying to make ends meet?
mm,
How many kids battle depression
yeah,
and go home to an empty home? How
yeah,
many kids go home to a home where substance abuse is an issue
yeah,
and they're trying to make changes positive in their life, but they go home and they're dealing with an alcoholic dad, or they're dealing with a mom that's strung out on
yeah.
meth, you
Or,
know?
or even because when you said an empty home, I was just thinking, because often when I'm coaching young men, and because I was a teenage father, so I a lot of times when I'm able, I try to train young men who are fathers, or about to be fathers, to let them know that you can be present and still be absent.
Sure.
So a lot of, like, you talk about an empty home, but what about an emotionally empty home?
Sure.
Like, what I'm saying? Like, I'm coming home, like I was at school where my peers was high-fiving me, giving me affirmation, or even giving me heck about something, you know what I mean? The teacher was telling me that I can be better, I can do better, and or how wonderful this project turned out, or vice versa. And I come home and there is no emotion,
Mm-hmm.
no emotional support, no anything in relates to that. And I think we have a lot of kids, man, in addition to the drugs and different things of that nature. And sometimes it's just like some parents have been emotionally checked out.
Sure.
Yeah. And so, in your experience, and particularly dealing in the foster care system, I know we always hear the horror stories, right? Like why a kid end up in foster care and different things of that nature. Have you guys ever run across someone, and that wasn't necessarily a horror story, but the story could have been horrific, or it became horrific because the kid's reaction to what they didn't understand?
Oh yeah. I mean, kids want love. They want love and acceptance. And we have our generation who grew up without the understanding that necessarily that's what helps kids thrive.
Mm,
We push kids. We have expectations of kids. You just need to buckle down. How many times have you heard it said, "Suck it up, Buttercup"?
hmm.
Or a kid falls down and gets hurt, and rub some dirt on it.
Yeah.
We Our generation didn't necessarily have a good, healthy understanding of mental health and what kids need as
Right.
far as connection.
Right.
And so, and you add on top of that the stressors of performing in a job. Parents have to perform, and
Mhm.
then parents have to provide. A lot of times parents get home at the end of the day and they're completely spent. They have
Mm.
nothing left to give themselves.
Right.
And one of my key messages that we share in our family, and that I preach all the time,
Hmm.
is we have to learn to hush the inner bully. We all have this inner voice that tells us we're not good enough, we're not smart enough, we're not skinny enough, we're not we're not rich enough. Whatever the enough is, fill in the blank.
You're right.
Whatever that inner dialogue is for you, and we allow that voice to dictate and determine our destiny.
Mm.
And we have to teach our kids that voice is not a reality,
Yeah.
that they have to control their inner dialogue, that they have to understand they are enough, that they are more than enough, that they've been created for a purpose, and that
Yeah.
when they find and discover their passion, they don't need anybody else's permission to
Mm.
chase after that.
Right.
And so if we can get these kids to understand who they are and
Mm.
the power that they have within them, they will be unstoppable.
Mm. And so, because you talk about that family environment of empowering and talking, and I know everybody's house and family dynamics are different. Everybody deals with different things. Like one of the things that I think we strive to do is to eat together. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and I just remember for me, man, that and particularly, I think a lot of families across the nation, um, the dinner table was the counseling session. You know what I mean? It was like it was, man. It was That was the time where you talked about your day. You got feedback. You know what I'm saying? You laughed,
Mm-hmm.
you cried, you got in trouble. Just a lot of things happened around the dinner table. Um, but I also realized that context, man, was not the same for a lot of people. You talk about our generation, which I'm part of Generation X, which was that, what they call the busted generation, right? It was like the first generation that didn't see a future for itself. And particularly because the baby boomers had stacks upon stacks of kids, and that whole span reached, produced so many different things out of it that man, they didn't it wasn't like a handoff, right? Like this is, you hand off. Now, some people have went on to be successful. Doesn't mean you can't be successful because you're in our generation, because we've done some things. But I think our generation produced a lot of late bloomers. You know what I mean? I think it produced a lot of complacency and uh, feel good things in the moment, and particularly because when our parents was working, we were in front of the TV or outside with our friends. So a lot of our information and education came from either our friends or the television for the most part. You know what I mean? It's like we didn't have video games like they have now, where it just sucks us in. You know what I mean? But most of the games we had to play with other people. You know what I mean? Like baseball, basketball, all those type of things. But the but for me, I was raised by my great grandparents. You know what I mean? So my parents was around, but they were so young when they had me. My mom was 17, my dad was 19. Um, I remember hearing the stories about a lady that talked to my mom about, because abortions wasn't legal at the time, and home remedies and all those types of things. And so so they were young, man. They were trying to figure out life and this and that. But I thank God, because the grace was my great grandparents, and they were so settled, because they were 69 and 71 when I came home from the hospital, and they raised me all the way up. So you know what I mean? Like you talking about, I got people talk about the old school raising. I got the old school raising. You know what I mean?
Old
Like,
school.
yeah, I was double old school, and so, but man, it was so unique to have that interaction that I don't think I would have gotten necessarily from my parents at that time. You know what I mean? The way they view the world, and the way they view relationship with God, and the way they view all those things. And I'm grateful for that. But I look around a lot of times when I see some of my peers and people that was in my age category growing up, because I also remember the crack epidemic, um, gang violence hitting our neighborhood, all those things that wasn't there growing up, but became like the focal point in our community, all while I was still, in my teens. You know what I mean? And so, and started to rip that family fabric away that was once like unique in our community, and all those things just begin to shred it to pieces. And but I just, man, my heart goes out to these kids that don't have that. So I think that's why I was so driven as a father to really pour into my kids, you know what I'm saying, and keep them close, and pour into them and be there for them, and all those types of things. I think because I had, because I have 7 biological kids, and that's, uh, and I call them bonus, you know what I mean, and a couple bonus kids, and so we that wasn't biologically mine, but end up being there in the house, you know what I mean, and growing up there. And so, but man, and then so when I look at people like yourself and others that I know that have really buckled down and did foster care, man, I'd be like, wow, that is, because I just know what it was like trying to get mine and keep them on the straight and narrow. You know what I mean? Like, to have different mechanisms about all of that, man, has just been, I think that's phenomenal. I think it's phenomenal. And so when you talk about your family structure, how much of God are you allowed to put in your home when you take on foster care? I think that's probably somewhat of a misconception, that you can't be who you are if you take on foster kids.
Well, ultimately, our kids, it's up to them. If they want to attend services, they can. If they don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
for us, it's really important that our kids know that we care about them and we love them regardless. Um, we lay out, of course, our expectations for behavior, for school, those sorts of things, and we let them know that they're gonna screw up. Okay, you're gonna make mistakes, and for me, it's not. I'm not one that's gonna preach to kids, and 10 years ago that was me. I was always trying to, convince a kid, okay, this is what you need to do, this is what God wants you to do, and you got to get saved, and you got to. And at this point in my life, I think I'm in a much different part of my journey, in
Mm.
that I know that my responsibility is to love kids and to show them that unconditional love, and the rest is up to the Holy Spirit.
Mm.
It's not my job to tell a kid what to believe. It's not my job to define for them their experience, um, to tell them that what their family believed was wrong, or
Mm.
it is truly my purpose to be Jesus with skin on, and to allow them to experience what the love of a father is,
Yeah.
to allow them to see what a healthy family is
Mm.
if there is such a thing. I mean, to allow them to see what it's like for a parent to model forgiveness, to model asking for forgiveness,
Mm.
to model um, admitting mistakes, you know, that that's ultimately my purpose. That's why these kids end up in our home, is so that we can model this for them and show them how life can be, how good life can be, how healthy relationships can look.
Yeah.
um, what what does it feel like when a mom and a dad live together and love each other? And no, our house isn't always hunky-dory. It's not always,
Yeah.
rainbows and unicorns. We have our experiences and frustrations, but that those frustrations and those those arguments don't end in violence. They don't end in the police showing up. They don't end in um, name calling and yelling and screaming, but letting them experience, healthy relationships. I
Mhm.
believe that's what we're called to do, because if they experience those healthy relationships and they can see what it looks like when a whole individual loves another person, without condition,
Yeah.
that it allows them to know that there is a God who
Mhm.
loves them and is waiting for them to be ready.
Yes.
And whenever they get to that point, that he's going to be there.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good, man. And so as I was thinking about when you were talking about all that, is these the new youth pastors that are coming in and hoping to shape and mold the world through their youth department, or have the next big youth movement. What would you say to them now, having once been in their shoes, and then thrusted into a world where a whole different, it's still youth, but a different level and caliber of youth and all those things. And so, what um, what would you say to them now, and how, if you would be given another opportunity to be a youth pastor, how would you go about reaching youth today?
It's not about numbers. you
Hmm.
know when if we look at the ultimate example, if we look at Jesus, he had 12
Yeah.
that he poured into. And those 12 ultimately changed the world.
Yeah.
And if, as a youth pastor, you can truly connect and give your time and effort to a few, maybe where you're at, your bandwidth, you can pour into 3 or 4 people, young men or young women, consistently.
Mm-hmm.
It's ultimately about connection, because connection is what drives relationships, and connection is what drives change.
Yeah.
You can have 1,000 kids in a room all jumping up and down, you know, you can have that energy, and man, that's great. It's fantastic. It's a lot of fun, but how much change is going on there?
Mm.
How much change? When we, as a youth pastor, even when we went into this, we were in a small church, and we went in, and there were 3 youth, and 2 of them were the pastor's kids. And
Oh wow, I remember
you
those
know,
days.
and when we'd been there about 6 months, and we went from 3 kids to about 40 kids. But there were, and I loved every one of those kids, but there were about 4 of those kids that were mine. We spent extra time together all the time.
Yeah.
They were at my house. I was pouring into them because it was important for me to go deep and not wide,
Mm.
because those are the relationships that are going to matter. You know,
Yeah.
kids need somebody to connect to. If I could say that there's one thing that kids lack in this world, it's connection. You
Yeah.
know, even in foster care, if you can't be a foster parent, if you can find a way to mentor or connect with a kid in foster care, and show them that you genuinely care and support them, not with an agenda, not with, I need to go preach to this kid, not, I need this kid to say he loves Jesus, not with, I need this kid to get good grades, but just the only goal is to connect with them and offer genuine love and support. If we had people that would do that, we
Yeah.
would change this world.
Yeah. Wow. And I think that's key, man. And how difficult is it um to break past the barriers of so many adults failing these kids? You know what I mean? Like,
It's
and particularly when parents fail a kid, like, you know, how do you go about navigating that and through those things and getting them to trust and open again?
it's a challenge. It takes time. It
Yeah.
takes laying down your expectations,
Yeah.
and really just being vulnerable and being there.
Mm.
Um, that you've got to let the ball in their court. You've got to allow them to take their time. You can't force it.
Yeah.
You can't make a kid. Um, so it takes commitment. It takes time.
Yeah. I mean, I commend you, man, for taking that time, and you and your wife both for doing a great job, and just reaching out to kids and doing what God has called you to do, and utilizing, you know, both the skills and the passions and the past of all of that to do that. And so, but here it is, you know, God has given you this vision for the Rise Above Youth Summit. And I know we could have spent a lot of time even talking about the things that you do outside of foster care and home, and the youth summit, just with your coaching business and other things, ventures that you have going on. But I really think the Rise Above Youth Summit is a tool that you all have developed. And the lessons are not long, like the talks are not long. So talk to us about those things and what type of topics and expertise are they looking to get? Is there material that goes along with the topics? What do you guys have going on there?
So this is something we discussed this morning, and each one of the speakers is working on developing a worksheet to go along with their lessons. So those are going to be hopefully uploaded here in the next few days as people get them to me. But we have, so I did a session entitled "Don't Let the Inner Bully Determine Your Destiny."
Yeah.
That we have Joshua Lee, who did a lesson on the gatekeeper, and he's talking about the brain and how the brain works. We have Bethany Clemenson, who's talking about discovering your superpower, and that's I'll base a lot on kindness. We have Pat and Julie Luther, who did a lesson on finance and how money works. We have Tom Miller did a lesson on everything worthwhile is uphill, and it's all about how struggle and failure is part of the process, and we have to learn to be comfortable with those things. So we have Michael Faber, who did a lesson on friendship. Just off the top of my head, trying to remember.
Yeah, you don't have to go through all 20 plus people. But are you planning on expanding any more talks or adding to the content that's there? What are you guys looking to do with that in the future?
That was the discussion this morning of what is the next step. We were hashing those things out. Right now we're trying to get some traction. We need to get the word out so that people know it's there and they start to utilize it. We've had about 100, as of this morning, about 120 that have gone through and that have registered and are starting to consume the content. We are looking at adding some incentives so that as kids, if they complete 5 of the lessons and they submit something to us, they can get either a bracelet or a sticker that we would send to them. So we're looking at creative ways to encourage kids to engage and to be involved. And I think ultimately that what we're going to do is try and create maybe 4 or 5 different tracks of content, so we can categorize things and things will be a little bit more organized rather than just showing up and, okay, bam, there's 24 speakers. Where do I start?
Okay.
I think ultimately we will see more content added. All of the speakers are excited to be a part. They are willing to spend time to develop this. They are all about thinking outside of the box and pouring into kids. So I can't say that we have a real firm vision of where this is going. I know that what I've learned is when you get an idea, you just take action. You got to take that next step, and when you take that next step, then you know what the next step is going to be.
Right.
And so that's what we did. The vision came to me, and I was like, how many times do we get an idea and we just go, or we get an idea and we want to analyze it to death. And we get stuck in that analysis paralysis. And I think it's so important, and this is a message for leaders and young leaders and growing leaders, that you don't have to know, step 1 through 25. If you know what step 1 is, take step 1. And when you take step 1, step 2 will become apparent to you. But don't sit and do nothing because you don't know what step 2 is.
Right.
Because you know what step 1 is. Do it. Take action.
Yeah. And one of the things I think I struggle with a lot of times is wanting to perfect something, versus starting and allowing it to be perfected through the process. Now sometimes when we say perfection, we confuse that with excellence. And I believe something should be done as excellent as it can be, right? You should always be, honing your craft or doing something to present something excellent. but I think we all have a starting point. I always have to tell myself this: everything has a starting point. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, and so, and sometimes when we want to have it perfected, we're also robbing people the opportunity to see what it means to grow. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Perfection is the enemy of progress,
Yeah.
and success is an iterative journey. You know, so many people think that you arrive at success, but no, success is iterative. So
Yeah.
you have an idea and you put it out there, and then you look at it and you go, oh, that didn't execute the way I thought it would. Let's mold it, let's shape it, let's redeploy it and execute again. So we iterate and we iterate and we iterate until we reach perfection, although nothing is ever perfect.
Yeah.
But that's how we get there. And you're right, that idea of perfection is the enemy of progress, because we sit on it and we think, oh, it's not good enough. It's
Yes.
not good enough.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's so key, man, because um, and really just saying, hey, let's work on this and let's keep it moving. Like you said, you can always repackage it, redo it. I it's amazing to me sometimes when a book is popular of how many revisions it's already gone through, but it's been repackaged, remarketed, and then before it actually is a popular thing, you know what I mean? Like, especially people's first books or first novels, like, you know what I mean? Like, you look at that. I love transparent leaders who can just tell me the deal, because I think sometimes when you see leaders that are already, have that success and different things of that nature, they don't talk a lot about the struggle, the beginning points, and what it took, and all of those things. You know what I mean? Where you have a Tyler Perry saying, when I slept in my car. You know what I mean? I didn't have any money. I was listening to T.D. Jakes where he's talking about there was a season in my life where the only way the church survived is I was putting my own money into it, you know what I mean, to keep it going, and all those things. And so I think sometimes we're afraid of those starting points, but understanding is those starting points that makes you appreciate the journey and the success and all of it that you go through. And so, man, Shawn, I appreciate you coming on, man, and just spending your time. I know it's difficult when you're working from home and you got all your kids working from home, and and trying to just carve out hours worth of time to make something happen, man. But I appreciate it. I really do. I love your insight. And what you're doing with the Rise Above Youth Summit, which is a virtual summit, which is a tool for educators, parents, churches, and anyone that is around youth that they can direct them to. I love it because it's like a uplifter, booster, uh, how Khan's Academy is for tutoring. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
it gives you that same type of feel, because I'm just going and I'm just going to tell you, Khan's Academy has saved many of home projects and homework assignments for me. you know, but if you're finding it difficult to reach maybe one of your kids, or if you're a youth pastor and you want to use this tool to to take your kids through some series while they're at home, do that. There's a platform there to do it. And so just tell everybody where to find this platform at, and then also how to contact you and some of the other services that you offer.
Sure. So it's riseaboveyouthsummit.com. It's an absolutely free resource. Kids can go there and register. If you are a parent or a youth advocate, youth pastor, when you go to that page, riseaboveyouthsummit.com, across the top, there's a banner that says for parents and educators. You can click that. It'll take you in. There's a letter explaining what we're doing. and then there's a list of all the speakers and their topics, and you can check out any of that content without even registering. What we would love to see happen is, parents that are engaged, sit down and watch one lesson a day with your kids over the next couple weeks. Or pick out 3 or 4 lessons that you think are valuable and sit down and watch them with your kids, and then engage with them, get feedback, talk them through it. Those are the ways that you make connections and build strong connections with your kids. As far as contacting me, my email address is probably the easiest way, and that's Shawn@ShawnDouglass.net, and it's SHAWN, and there's 2 S's on Douglass. Other things that I do, keynote speaking. I have a brand that we are building called Hush the Inner Bully, and we're doing some challenges and then some coaching around that, as I ultimately believe the one true key to success is our mindset. If we don't conquer our mindset and learn to control those inner thoughts, then there's no way we can really overcome those big obstacles. So I appreciate the time today. This has been great. I've really enjoyed the conversation. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Thank you. And we have to have you come back on as you develop more of that content as well. So I look forward to doing that, man, because those inner thoughts, man, it's one of my favorite topics. I'm taking a group of people through a Bible study I developed called Reboot Your Faith. And it's literally like how you reboot a computer, Control, Alt, Delete, control your thoughts, alter your behaviors, and delete negativity in your life.
Love it. That's awesome.
Yeah. And
Good
so
stuff.
Thank you again, man. And thank everybody for tuning in to the Glass Table. And so we'll talk to you soon, Shawn.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.